All right, continuing with assignment 7. We can work through the unit module. You'll see the question of the day, our last question of the day in the unit module. It's unit 14. And you'll see past examples. You can do a person from the shoulders up, or you can do an animal head to toe on just a white background. But if we go to assignments, which is where all our supplemental materials are, our helpful resources, and we scroll down to assignment 7, you will see a lot of helpful resources here. So one is my exhaustive explanation of digital painting. One is an inspiring process exploration in digital painting. One is an artist that digitally paints for settings and concept design, kind of putting bookends at our course. We started the class with assignment 1 with compositing for concept settings. You can now use the last technique we learned to also create concept settings. And then a mentorship presentation on the pain of digital painting, right? So this one is probably the most helpful. Maybe I say that because it's the only one I made. But like we had slides on an explanation of digital coloring, like we had slides on an explanation of CMYK color separation, this is how digital painting is different. Digital painting is coloring on top of a sketched line. And sometimes that sketch isn't even a line sketch. It could be a shape sketch. So you'll notice here I used Wonder Woman so much in the digital coloring slides. I just use a digital painting example here. Notice that it does start with a loose line drawing, but those immediately get overtaken with pixels on layers on top so that it's fully shaped and rendered. And it doesn't matter what style it is. It can be abstracted, it can be cartoonish, it can be photorealistic. You're not going to have line art in a digital painting, right? So here's a handout that you can also find under links, just like the lemon one for digital coloring and for CMYK color separation. These are the two main approaches to digital painting. That you have some sort of sketch, either sketched shapes or sketched lines, and then you just build up onto it. You can't really think of it in terms of flat color, duotone, but I try to kind of define at least the steps of the kiwi in the standard steps we use for digital coloring, but they're not necessary because as you're building pixels and shapes, like the local color of this apple is already many colors, and its edges are already really soft. So it keeps things really, really soft until the very end when it kind of trims it. Because the advantage of digital painting over traditional painting is you can access and augment every pixel on every layer at any time. Right. This is a portrait example I did of the author James Joyce. And here's a more representational version, that kind of matches what James Joyce looks like, even though it has some odd color choices, right? But you can also go abstract. You can even push it towards non-representational, where it's just about shapes and forms and colors and designs. Or you can kind of layer them on top of each other. And the key is you're going to pay attention to the details, but you don't start by painting the details, right? You want to know kind of what things you want to get the most attention in your audience. What are the focal points? Those are the details you'll bring out. But you start by blocking your colors roughly. So you work general to specific. And the only tool we're going to use is the brush tool in Photoshop. And we'll change the brush tool to a color selector tool just by holding down Option, like we did with the paint bucket tool. So this is very simple in terms of technique, but very individualized in terms of method, right? So we're not going to be using a lot of complicated tools or a really complicated workflow. It's just going to be about how we use our brush, what colors we use, and what references we're inspired by. So here's a past student example. This is the limitation of only one photo reference, right? This student worked really hard, got a good result, but every decision they make, if they only have one photo reference, has to reference that one photo. So I think it's a good digital painting of Jack Black, but Jack Black making a really weird expression with his teeth, right? So his teeth are in there because he didn't have any photo of Jack Black without the teeth there to make it still look like him, if that makes sense. But he didn't mind that it was a really goofy portrait. Here is the advantage of digital painting. You start it out, you block your colors, but then at any time you can kind of warp it, you can shift it, you can push it around, you can fix it. This also is a good reminder that accessories, things that are man-made, glasses, piercings, sometimes even facial hair, it depends, those should go on at the end, right? So you should do all the organic stuff and then do the mechanical stuff at the end. And then this same student did a self-portrait and allowed me to use these images, right? So you don't have to take your digital painting super seriously. You can play with abstraction, with different colors, kind of like a caricature. And then this is an artist I found who does both kind of setting fine art stuff and does concept designs for commercial purposes, and does this nice mixture of digital painting and compositing. So what they'll do is they'll composite and cut out these kind of textures and layer them onto their digital painting and work back and forth. So it's not straight collage like our compositing projects. It's like collage with paint, collage with paint. There's all kinds of ways you can use these skills. Now, just some examples of the workflow, right? So these are all going to be dragons, because just that was fun. They start with some sort of drawing, but then those lines quickly get overtaken, right? And what I like most about digital painting is that from the drawing stage, you can immediately start messing with it. You can start warping it, changing it, until it's what you want in order to spend the time painting on top of. Now this one really refines its line art. Pretty much does finished line art there. And then decides it's going to, instead of digitally color behind the line art, just paint over the top of it at that stage. And then starts to replace all their lines. Which to me is kind of a waste, because I think it would have been better as digital coloring than digital painting. But that's just my taste. So this is kind of a warning against overworking your drawing phase. Think of it as a loose sketch. It doesn't need to be anything more than that. In traditional painting, it would be something just like scumbled, really loosely sketched with vine charcoal on a primed canvas. Right? It's hard to get a lot of detail that way. Here's another one where you have this beautiful gestural sketch, and then they really refine the line art before completely replacing it. And this was concept art for a Monster Hunter game. I know Isaac likes Monster Hunter. All right. So we'll get started. Some of those other things are interesting, right? This is an artist that was a past student's final presentation artist, and they just use pretty simple blocking of color and then slowly building the detail within those blocks to get their finished paintings. So it's not about making it photorealistic. It's about making a painting that you want in your portfolio, even if it's quite abstracted. All of it's digital painting. And then this one, this is that artist that uses digital painting to create concept art, sometimes for video games, sometimes for trading cards. So this skill is not just for figurative work, right? Sometimes for movie posters. And then this one, I thought was pretty funny. This was a mentorship presentation by digital honors students. And it stresses that you need to customize your brush to get anything that's visually interesting. We're going to learn that. It means that your references are pretty important. Not just your photo reference, but also your style references. That your sketching matters, but it doesn't need to be super meticulous. And that the stage we're going to try to get to by the end of today is to do what's called the base color layer. To block in all of the shapes with pigment, with pixels. And then next class we'll start with overlay layers and kind of building up more refinement on top of those base layers. Okay, so How can we get started? Well, the first thing we got to do is we got to paste our photo reference, right? So I've added some pictures of my actual cat here. These are my inspiration references. And then maybe I want some sort of art historical reference. And when I think of animal paintings, really painterly, I think of Helen Frankenthaler. And Susan Rothenberg. And this is why you need to take art history, so you know these things. You can reference these things if you want that, right? But art history is a great resource. I would say better than ChatGPT at getting ideations. So I might pull a few of these. So these are, traditional paintings. But it shows kind of the quality of the paint, the brush strokes that can mimic the anatomy of an animal, and sometimes it might just show really cool textures. Helen Frankenthaler is an abstract expressionist painter, but all with staining the canvas. So you get some really interesting effects that way. So I'm going to save those, and I'm going to add those in. And that's going to affect my painting. Your references will affect the colors you choose and how you end up painting. So then I'm going to add those in. This is actually requirement 1, that you have at least one photo reference. At least one. I recommend more. And I'll put "and inspiration." You only need one. But the more you have, the more confident you'll be in your choices. And I had to get my cat from several angles because I'm not sure how I'm going to pose the cat yet. I need to see what its coloring is in different parts of the body. All right, let's see. Where did they save to? Downloads. So if you guys will do that, that's a good way of starting this project and acknowledging the deadline, which is next class. Because we're going to just work pretty energetically on this project. We're not going to be subtle about it. But I'm going to show you a few different methods of how you can sketch it. All right. So now, this is my advice to you. Now that you have your stuff posted, take a screen grab of it all. So it's all in one file. Doesn't need to be high resolution. Right. And I know I have to have it be full body, so I really want that pose. There's just something about it I really like. Instead of waiting for my cat to make a pose like that, I'm going to zoom in on my reference. It'll probably be easier not to do it in Canvas here. I'm going to do it from my folder. And I'm going to start a folder for assignment 7. Since I finished assignment 6, the poster. Okay, I'm going to mark it yellow because I'm working on it. And now I'm going to add that screenshot into it. Then I'm going to make a duplicate of it, just so I can zoom in on this one. Crop it down, make it bigger, maybe clean it up a little bit. You can always modify, use your compositing knowledge to clean up your reference, right? All right, so this is what's called a hero reference, because it's the pose I want. Even though I'm going to change a lot of the colors, a lot of the proportions. And then you have your artistic references. These are all these kind of things. All right, so now what do? We open up Photoshop. It appears that Photopea, I'm looking into it, but it appears that Photopea is blocked on our campus network, just like TikTok is blocked.